Happy Wednesday, friends. This is Kate, and I'm here with another God book. Today we're going to read one of our books from the Sparkhouse Publishing called Jonah and the Whale. It's written by Erwin Grosche and Karsten Teich, and it's a Bible story. Jonah is found in the Old Testament. He's one of the prophets, and let's hear his story. Jonah and the Whale by Erwin Grosche and Karsten Teich. This book was donated to Old South Church Children by Vicki Newman. Just what I needed, Jonah groaned, stretching and yawning wide as the sky. He'd been dozing in the warm sun when God woke him up. God said to Jonah, "Go to Nineveh, the great city, and proclaim this message. God is going to destroy Nineveh because the people there are evil." Just what I needed, Jonah scowled. He didn't want this job. He decided to run away from God. Jonah ran to the harbor and found a ship whose captain would take him aboard. He wanted to get as far away from God as possible. Jonah hid below deck with the ship's cargo and fell asleep fast. His voyage at sea began. Suddenly, God threw a mighty wind upon the sea. A great storm rose up, bashing the ship with its raging waves. The terrified sailors cried out for help, but their gods did not respond. To make the ship lighter, they threw everything they could overboard, but the ship still threatened to sink. And Jonah continued to sleep. The captain rushed below deck to wake Jonah. "A storm is raging. It's trying to pull our ship to the bottom of the sea. How can you be sleeping?" "Just what I needed," Jonah groaned. He admitted to the captain that he was running away from God's call. "It's your fault?" the captain cried in despair. "What shall we do?" Jonah blinked blearily at the captain. "The last thing I need is for something to happen to you and your sailors. Throw me into the sea, the storm will stop, and you can continue your journey." The captain shook his head. "Use all your strength to row to shore," he shouted at his men, but the waves crashed higher and higher, splitting onto the deck. The wind howled with rage, and the crew howled back in fear. Finally, the captain gave in. The crew threw Jonah into the sea. At once the storm stopped. The sea ceased its raging. As Jonah started to swim towards shore, God sent a humongous whale to swallow him up. With a slurp, Jonah slid into the belly of the enormous creature. He looked around, terrified. When he realized he was okay, Jonah once again lay down to sleep. But the fish jostled him back and forth, and so much that Jonah could not rest. "Just what I needed," Jonah cried out. "Why can't you leave me alone? First you hurl me into the sea, and now this?" Jonah was miserable. Jonah spent 3 long days and 3 long nights inside the belly of the fish, praying to God. "Okay, I give up. I'll go to Nineveh and deliver your message to the people," Jonah said reluctantly. So God commanded the fish to spit Jonah onto the shore. Jonah let the warm sun dry his clothes, then left for Nineveh. Jonah finally made his way to the vast city of Nineveh and stood at the marketplace. Many people quickly gathered around and just stared at him, waiting for him to speak. Just what I needed, Jonah thought nervously, but he bravely shared God's message. Listen, people of Nineveh, you don't follow God. Your wicked ways will bring destruction on your city. In 40 days, God will destroy Nineveh. Prepare yourselves, for the end is near. The people were ashamed. They knew they had been disobeying God. Jonah's message spread through the city like wildfire until it reached the king of Nineveh. In distress, the king rose from his throne and exchanged his royal robes for rough sackcloth. He sat down in the dust and he proclaimed, "People of Nineveh, change your ways. Change your lives. Fast and repent. Call out to God and change your evil ways. Who knows? Perhaps God will have compassion on us and will be merciful instead of angry." God saw that the people were sorry and were changing their ways. So God decided to save them. Now, unhappy and annoyed, Jonah left the city and called out to God. "I've always known you are a gracious and compassionate God. Your kindness is so great that you forgive when people repent with their hearts. But what was the point in making me come here if you weren't going to destroy the city, like you said? You woke me up, sent me off, and left me alone with your words." Jonah fumed. Jonah was so angry and disappointed that he paced back and forth until he ran out of energy. He sat and watched the city to see what would happen until he fell asleep. God decided to teach Jonah a lesson so that he could learn what love is. As Jonah awoke the next morning, he was surprised to see a bush growing above him, providing a cooling shade. "Just what I needed," Jonah rejoiced. He sat under the bush all day and thanked God. But the next night, God sent a worm to eat the roots of the bush until it withered and dried up. "Just what I needed," Jonah pouted. "I can't believe my shady bush is dead. I've nothing to protect me now from the sun and wind." God laughed. "Jonah, you are just what I needed when I asked you to proclaim my message to the people of Nineveh. But you ran away instead. So now you're concerned about this bush that you neither planted nor watered. Can't you understand how much I must care for the people of Nineveh, who I created? I love all my children, even those who try to run away from me." Jonah thought back to the storm and the big fish and the shady bush. God had done all of this to show how much Jonah was loved. Jonah looked to God and no longer needed anything. The end. That is our sweet book, Jonah and the Whale. I hope the Jonah story makes your imagination bloom a bit. It's a wild story, right? Big fish swallowed up, puked up on a beach. I mean, it's all very imaginative and wild. I bet you could draw or make or tell or even reenact this story and think a little bit more about it and what the message is. The message of God's love being so big and so deep for everyone. And that God might have a job for you. And maybe it's not your idea of a good time. But God needs you to do it anyway. Be blessed, my friends. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.